What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the Week 6 college football betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, is my BBOC co-host, Colin Wilson, ready to learn a little bit more about some of these marquee top teams in the country. What's going on, brother?
I'm glad I'm here. I was afraid I was going to get a call from Sam Pittman because he has shuffled the entire starting five on the offensive line. I thought I might have to go down and find if I have eligibility because the Arkansas offensive line is a dumpster fire and a lot of people are calling for Sam Pittman's head. I'm just glad I could be here and not down at the university today.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been a fan of what Pittman has done. He's in a bad spot. Look at the division and conference he's in, and given what he has to work with, I think he's did a good job until he hired Dan Enos.
Yep. Don't hire your friends.
Then he lost me. I mean, we've been yelling about it for years, and then he went and hired Dan Enos, and I cannot stay behind him anymore. And people are already, look, you could dig into some of Arkansas's numbers, I'm sure, and you watch it. It's just not, we'll talk about them for what it's worth. They're at Ole Miss. We'll do that in rapid fire. We have three marquee games that we'll get to. The games that I think are being talked about the most, obviously Oklahoma, Texas, that should be fun again. Alabama, Texas A&M, and Kentucky, Georgia. We'll get to, I think, 18 to 20 games in total. Get to some trash. We'll talk Friday night, favorite underdog money lines and favorite favorites, which have been hot. It was a good week for the podcast last week. Hopefully we can carry it over into this week. So let's get things started with a quick little look ahead or look away. All right, this is the section where we kind of look at the schedule and determine, okay, is there a spot worth backing a team or fading a team based on who they just played or who they will play next week? Sometimes this could be a second half play. Maybe the team takes their foot off the gas a little sooner, pulls their starters a little sooner. Maybe they just don't want to show much. For this week, we're just going to talk about two games, and they are both related to the game next week between Notre Dame and USC, which we will obviously cover in depth. Let's start with Notre Dame at Louisville. This is a really fascinating game because Notre Dame, my biggest question for them, and they are probably the poster boy for look ahead or look away this season because of how their schedule has played out. How much do they have left in the tank? Their schedule has been started in Ireland, right? And then you get a FCS team, but then you're at NC State. Then you have that thriller against Ohio State. The next week you have another thriller at Duke. Now you go to Louisville, and then next week you have USC. Like that is just, this is a spot. So the spot to me, and by the way, for what it's worth, Notre Dame. 6.5 point favorite here. Over unders come down a touch to 54. Notre Dame should get a couple of receivers back to help on the outside. So when I look at this game, I'm really conflicted because the spot screams Louisville, right? At home, hosting Notre Dame, a Notre Dame team that's just come off two wars and has had just a brutal stretch of schedule all season with USC on deck. But then I dig into Louisville, and I was lower than the market coming into the year on them. And the results, yes, they're undefeated, but the results, arguably should have lost to Georgia Tech. Indiana, you barely beat Indiana. Indiana has almost lost to Akron at home. Then you beat BC, but you should have lost to NC State, a team that Notre Dame throttled. If Brennan Armstrong, who's now benched, think about the teams that Louisville has played. Indiana fired their offensive coordinator. NC State has moved on from their quarterback. And these are, Georgia Tech fired their defensive or demoted their defensive coordinator. These are all teams that Louisville barely beat. So look, there's some growing pains with that offense. Plummer looked horrendous at NC State. The defense lost a couple really key cogs last year. from last year's team, and I haven't really been that impressed. So yeah, I'm conflicted here. It's like the spot is Louisville, but they're a team that is on my radar to fade because they're just such a fraudulent 5-0, and they have so many holes. So to me, this is most likely a stay away. What are you seeing here in this top 25 matchup, 7:30 Eastern on ABC?
There's a lot of reasons to have hesitation. Last week, you and I waffled, right? We talked specifically that we like Notre Dame at 4.5, 5. We like Duke at +7, and look what happened in that game, right? And I mean, we accurately called that this is in a zone that we just don't want to touch. Now with this one, Louisville's not Duke. Louisville has warts. I mean, their strength of schedule is 108th. That kind of pulls me off all these numbers that I'm seeing. Like they're really good in passing downs and you know, they have other areas from a rushing perspective, from a tackling perspective on defense that they're really good at. But how much trust do you put in those numbers? Considering what Louisville has played from a strength of schedule perspective, they don't have it in offensive finishing drives. I usually need that. They don't have it in defensive finishing drives. But when you look at this Notre Dame schedule, it's like impossible to get behind them too. You know, and we talked last week about this hangover effect that Freeman has after he plays these big top 25 games. It has showed up every single time, dating back to losing to Marshall or losing to Stanford last year, just struggles covering in these big games.
And last week they should not have covered, and they probably should have lost. So yeah, and you saw the hangover. They were tired, and that's another question: how tired is this team?
Yeah,
like how much
they got to be exhausted. I mean, they played in freaking Ireland. They played in week 0. They've already had monster games. They're already got 10th in strength of schedule and 15th in strength of record. These guys could really take off. Notre Dame could take the rest of the year off and still have one of the best schedules in the nation. And I think there's other things in the Louisville numbers that I don't like. Like, yeah, they're number 1 I'm reading in passing down explosives, but they have 129th in rate. They're not in passing downs ever. Like Braum has been moving the chains like crazy, having methodical drives. So that doesn't really tell me that they're really as explosive as what the numbers are telling me. At the end of the day, if Notre Dame is going to tail off in a certain place, it's going to be on defense. That makes me want to take an over here. I do project a 63. Louisville is going to be able to move the chains. Can they score? I don't know. Notre Dame is, you know, fantastic in finishing drives. They're way better, top 25 than Louisville's been against a softer schedule. I do like the over in this game, but I can't add Louisville to my round robins. I can't add them. I mean, if you play it, it's a spot play. That's all it is. And I just don't know if Louisville has the power to get this done.
Yeah, I could play the spot if it's 7.
Right.
I can't do it at 6.5. So if it gets 7, I might dabble on some Louisville, which would mainly be the spot. But I can't play it at its current price.
And how much are we hitting USC? How much are we hitting USC next week? I mean,
well, yeah, it'll depend on what happens in both of these games. So let's talk USC. USC, before heading to South Bend to take on Notre Dame, will host Arizona. They're laying a little over 3 touchdowns. Over under, as you might imagine, sky high 72 and a half. Big question here: will Jaden Delores suit up for Arizona? Fafita was mid serviceable in his place, but Delores gives this offense the highest ceiling. Although, does it matter who's a quarterback when you play USC's defense? My thoughts on this game: Arizona is a competent offense. The defense is bad; they can't cover anybody. But like, if this USC team, they shouldn't be laying over 3 touchdowns to anybody that has a competent offense. And Arizona has great receivers, and especially if Delores comes back. I mean, look, the Arizona State offense woke back up against USC. You saw what Colorado did. I mean, even if you're down, Colorado was down 27, and then all of a sudden they had a chance to win the game. This USC defense is just atrocious. So it's Arizona or nothing here. You got the spot, especially if Delores plays. Some other injuries worth noting, but do you see any reason why you would want to lay over 3 touchdowns with this USC defense?
No, absolutely not. I like the under. I want to find out if Jaden Delores is playing. If he's not playing, I would really like the under. I projected 69. I think the market's at 72 is the time we're recording here. It's just the simple fact of I don't see USC trying to extend there's no reason to blow them out with such a huge game on deck. Arizona could be without Jaden Delores, which takes a lot off of an offense. Right now that is top 15 at success rate, whether that's rush or pass. I think the one thing that I loved about Colorado is I said that Shedeur Sanders is perfect to go up against this USC defense, because all Colorado is a passing downs explosive machine. They love 3rd and 12 and busting out a 20-yard play. That is not the Arizona offense so far this year. They are 130th in passing downs explosives on offense. So they're successful. They move the chains, but they're not getting it in chunk yardage. They do not have the EPA on offense that Colorado has. I like the under in this game.
All right, before we get to the marquee matchups of the week, as a reminder, the BBOC podcast is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 paid back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions to apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's kick things off at noon with the game everyone is going to have on their TV on ABC in the Red River rivalry shootout, showdown, whatever you want to call it, in Dallas between number 12 Oklahoma and number 3 Texas. Both come into this game at 5-0 overall. Texas 5.5, 6-point favorite. Oklahoma's taken a little bit of money here. I think there's a 5 as we're recording this. As flash at some places. Over under has come way down to 60.5 from the soft open. If you recall last year, Texas absolutely throttled Oklahoma 49-0, but there's not really much to take from that game because Oklahoma tried to run like Wildcat with their 3rd string quarterback and obviously ended up getting destroyed. When you look at both of these teams, obviously Texas has better data points. They have the best win in the country at Alabama in fairly dominant fashion, but Oklahoma is certainly improved. I think just from the eye test, you can see that their defense is definitely improved in year 2 under Venables. The offense, like Gabriel's playing clean football, but there's just at times they get stuck in the mud, and there's just not the same explosive weapons on the outside that you'll see Texas feature. And if you look like that, I've talked about this a lot, that SMU game, it was 14-11 midway through the 4th quarter. The Cincinnati game, it ends 20-6. Cincinnati really just shot themselves in the foot. So, the offense didn't really explode against either defense. Decent defenses, but nowhere close to the caliber of Texas. When I look at this game, I make it close to a touchdown. So I don't love anything. I actually lean the under, although the pace will be pretty fast, especially with Oklahoma. There are 2 weaknesses from what I've seen. And, they've played a schedule where, no one really could exploit this. But their offensive line still has some questions. And we saw what the Texas defensive front did to Alabama, another team that has some offensive line questions. And then the Oklahoma secondary, I think, is the most vulnerable part of their defense. And Texas certainly has the weapons to attack downfield. Now, can Ewers have one of his good games? If he does, I think Texas covers this game. If he doesn't, Oklahoma will be right in it. But if I had to make a prediction on this game, so I'm around a touchdown. Keeps going down. I might play Texas, but I have a sneaky feeling it's gonna be a close game, and I have a sneaky feeling Texas wins by 3. But I make it around a touchdown. What do you see in this game?
Yeah, I make it Texas -5. Boy, the market, we were talking before the podcast started, the market has just been moving this week. It's just been crazy. Boy, it seems like it's just getting faster and faster in the week too. We used to get big moves on Friday, and now they're happening on Monday. This one specifically, I wrote it up for Action Network, I think Monday or Tuesday, and said, I'm going to buy a 6.5 up to 7. I'm going to pay -120. I've been in Red River shootouts way too many times to know that I need a TD with a dog. So that's what I'm going to do. Now this morning,
sometimes you need 8. One of my worst weeks ever.
Yeah, it was bad.
+7.5 in triple overtime.
That's happened too. All for the golden hat here. So I think, this morning it was at 6.5 in the market. I didn't think we're ever going to get a 7. I didn't know who was going to release any service plays to manipulate the market, but I knew at 6.5 I had to buy -120, and I did. 2 hours later, like Thursday afternoon, early afternoon, this thing got walloped. Oklahoma got nailed. 6.5 sixes, 5.5 fives. I don't think it's ever coming back up. So we need to talk about this number at 5 because I think it's probably going to hang around there. And I had a hard time with the analytics on this one because Oklahoma's strength of schedule is 82nd. They just have not played the strength of schedule that Texas has, especially with a win against Alabama. Now,
and the other thing is with Oklahoma's schedule is like they played a couple decent teams and it didn't look great. And then the bad teams they played, they absolutely destroyed, right? So then some of your data points, like you just the margin, you exceeded expectations, but you were playing some backup quarterbacks and then the decent teams you played, you covered, but like it was a little meh.
Well, I wanted to, there was one specific area because I don't think either team is going to be able to run the ball. I know Jonathan Brooks had a big week last week, but against Kansas, it's Kansas defense. I don't think either team is going to be able to run the ball here, especially with their, and so that's going to put each team behind the chains and put them in passing downs. So I specified on that stat and I gave this game like the national championship treatment. Like I went, deep in, into coverage and throwing and Ewers and Gabriel. And so here's what I come up with. Passing downs explosives, these teams are 9th and 10th ranked in the nation. And when you look at the defenses, there is a stark contrast. OU 68th in defending it, explosives and passing downs. Texas dead last, 133rd. Like I just shake my head like this cannot be true. And then you go and look at the number of 20 and 30-yard passes that Texas has given up. And, they have, and it wasn't Jalen Milroe that did that to them, but, there have been some passes that have gotten over the heads of the Texas defenders. So I want to go a little bit deeper into that. And the thinking of it is quarterbacks do well against certain type of coverages. Every quarterback struggles with cover 2, 2 high safeties, a shell. Some thrive in quarters, some not against cover 3, stuff like that. So when I go and I look at it, OU has had heavy success against quarters and cover 1. They've been above average against cover 3. And that really kind of plays into where Texas is. They play a lot of quarters and cover 1, which Dylan Gabriel has had a lot of success against. When I flip it to the other side, that's what really made this decision that I'm playing OU. I'm going to block out all the other noise because when you look at Texas's numbers, they have been fantastic from a success rate and an EPA level against quarters coverage. That completely falls off the map against cover 3, cover 2, and cover 1. And so maybe Quinn Ewers just had, and I went and checked last year too, like Quinn Ewers just tears up quarters coverage. But when it comes to man-to-man straight up even with these wide receivers, it's just a lower success rate and it's a lower EPA number. OU, remember that. Quinn Ewers is good against quarters. OU plays cover 1, 2, and 3, 61% of their snaps against the pass. Only 19% of coverage have they spent in quarters. That is bad news for Quinn Ewers, who has been dreadful against cover 1 and cover 3. If OU is going to line up and do those coverages, that is a huge thing for the Sooners. I think the advantage is on them. I would still buy Oklahoma at 5.5. I would stop buying it at 5. I agree with you. It's probably a 3-point game. The only thing left for me in this handicap is whether or not I'm throwing it in parlay round robin underdogs or not. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to do that with OU yet, but I do like OU to cover.
Winner of this game, you could probably put in the Big 12 championship right now.
Yeah, it's a pass.
And yeah, I mean, like if you look at the state of the next team in the standings is West Virginia. It's definitely a down year for the Big 12 compared to recent ones. When you look at, teams like TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, they've all been fairly disappointing. And I don't think that they're a real threat to the top this year. So we could, even if Texas loses this game, or Oklahoma, we could see a rematch in the Big 12 championship. But the winner of this game in the driver's seat. Also, another key, I haven't seen an injury update today. A guy I've talked about a lot this year who is just so underrated and what he can do for the Texas offense. He's just a walking explosive play, is Jatavian Sanders. And he's banged up. I don't know if, have you seen an update on him?
I have not. I can look right now though.
Because he matters. He's like, third down. It looks like he's good to go for Saturday. So we'll see how healthy he is. That was as of today. He's important to that Texas offense. Like he'll make a key third down catch. He'll have a big explosive play. He's a very difficult cover and a matchup problem for opposing defenses. But we'll definitely learn a lot about this Oklahoma team, which has some good data points and some not so good data points this year, but they're definitely much improved. I agree on the rushing attacks. I don't think either team's going to have much success on the ground. So it's going to come down to which quarterback makes more plays. So yeah, the coverages and might favor Oklahoma here. The weapons favor Texas. Can Ewers have a clean game, and can he hit those deep shots? And then how many deep shots is the Texas defense going to allow? So yeah, I think it comes down to the nuances of both passing attacks. I think it's going to be a fun one compared to last year, which you could turn it off after the first quarter, which rarely ever happens in the Red River Shootout. All right, let's move on to our second marquee game of the day. Let's talk a little Alabama, Texas A&M. This game's 3:30 Eastern on CBS. So this is, it's not the greatest overall slate from a depth perspective, but your main TVs for this day are set. Like start at noon with Texas, Oklahoma, roll right in. You keep your bar volume on one TV, and there's no question what it's going to be. 3:30, you're going right to CBS, Alabama, Texas A&M in College Station in front of the 12th man. Texas A&M down to a 1. Talk about money moving. Talk 1.5 point underdog. My prediction, they close as a favorite. Yep. Over under has come way down to 46.5 currently from soft open of I don't know if there's a 55, but I think there was like a 54 out there. So Texas A&M has obviously taken a lot of money, a lot of respected money. And I agree with it. I mean, I know you and I both bet +3 on cheap buy earlier in the week. I think Texas A&M wins this game. When I look at this game, Alabama, like we obviously saw what they did against Texas, and it was yikes. There was major problems again against South Florida. They beat Ole Miss. But that's the spot of all spots at home, and it was against an Ole Miss team that was severely shorthanded on offense, dealing with a ton of injuries. And then you play Miss State, a team of Miss State. I know you love Miss State, your boys, but the Miss State team that I'm way down on. And this final score was 40-17, but like, and it was just turnovers. It was a Miss State offense that can't figure itself out. The Bama offensive production, I mean, it's just not there right now. I mean, Miller was 10 of 12 for 160 yards. They ran it I think like 43 times for, and they averaged, let me see, like 4.4 yards per carry. Like it's just not impressive right now. The defense is very good. I'll give them that. It's still top 5 pedigree defense, but the offense has major issues, and it starts up front. We talked about this, 2 weeks ago. You brought up the tackles for loss stat. Like that was very alarming early on. The amount of times that Bama was getting, tackled behind the line, and this has to be a run-centric offense with Jalen Milroe, but the offensive line has major issues. That's basically, Quinn Ewers had a great game, but that's basically what decided that Texas-Alabama game, was that Texas defensive front just disrupted everything that Alabama wants to do. I think that could be the same story here. This Texas A&M defensive front, and they've been great against the run all season. Their front is playing really well. And, last year was an issue, even though they had a ton of talent. They fixed that. It was very bizarre how bad the Texas A&M run defense was last year. But it's been very good this year. You can beat them a little bit with some explosive passes. I mean, Milroe has a great deep ball. Maybe you can hit 1 or 2 there, but you have to throw, like we saw what Miami did with Van Dyke. They really just attacked through the air. I just don't see it with this Alabama offense right now. Texas A&M, their offense, look, they have some issues on the offensive line as well. They're starting quarterbacks out. We don't think there's much of a drop off to Max Johnson. But the other biggest difference in this game is that Texas A&M has a quarterback who's a better passer overall. The difference in weapons on the outside is significant in favor of Texas A&M. I mean, if Alabama's wide receiver room, it's just no one has stuck out, right? No one's making big plays. Part of that is, the quarterback play, the offense, it's just not working. The offensive line, there's a lot of pressure. But I just trust these Texas A&M receivers to make a couple more plays in this game. than I do Alabama. Throw in the home field advantage. I think Texas A&M wins this game, and then starts to really be in the discussion for can they get to the SEC championship. But I like the Aggies here. I think they win this game. I know this line has come down. I would still play it +1.5.
I like them too. I took a little bit of a different route to come to that conclusion, but I would still take Texas A&M at a pick. I power rated a pick, but let's throw the power ratings aside and talk about both sides of the ball. Alabama.
Yeah, I make them a small favorite for what it's worth. But go.
Yeah, Alabama front seven, not as good as Texas A&M's. If that's a place to attack, that's it. If Texas A&M wants to move the ball, it's going to have to be on the ground. Right now, Le'Veon Moss, 3.8 yards after contact. And Bama's D is 94th in stuff rate and 56th in line yards. And they have played some good offenses. So, they can be pushed around down in the trench. And I expect Texas A&M to do that. I don't expect a huge flash of points from Texas A&M here. Max Johnson is not as mobile as Connor Weigman. He does not have the average depth of target throwing, but he's just as accurate and he's just as efficient. So I do expect Texas A&M to methodically get their points, maybe not a whole lot of them, but I do see them getting more points. Now, the real handicap for me, which, had me buying Texas A&M early this week, was the fact that Texas A&M is number one in defensive havoc in the nation. 49 tackles for loss, 25 PBUs against this Alabama offensive line. That is not going to be good because Alabama 111th in havoc allowed, mostly from allowing tackles for loss. They've allowed 37 this year, but Jalen Milroe is going to be in a crowded pocket, whether that is running RPO or whether that is passing. He's going to have people all over him, and that's not good. And I think the one thing, you remember the handicap when we did Alabama, Texas back in week 2? Would Texas keep their pass rush integrity? That's what Sark said. And that means, keeping the correct lanes to keep Jalen Milroe from taking off. I think Texas A&M is going to have supreme success keeping their lanes in a pass rush and buckling down on Jalen Milroe. And if I go back and look at the tape here, and if I look at some stats, mobile quarterbacks on Texas A&M's schedule, KJ Jefferson sacked 7 times, a net -3 yards. Robbie Ashford, 8 RPO attempts, 25 yards. Tyler Van Dyke never even ran. He just threw and blitzed it behind that defense. Jalen Milroe is not going to do that. And the most successful quarterback on
and they didn't let Peyton Thorne run all over him like Georgia did.
That's right. That's right. And the most successful quarterback on the ground is Jaya Wright from ULM. He had 5 rushes for 34 yards, despite having 2 sacks that brought that yardage down a little bit. So do I think Texas A&M can stop Jalen Milroe from taking off out of the pocket? Absolutely. Do I think they can maintain their pass rush integrity like Sark said? Absolutely. I'm taking Texas A&M's defense, the front 7, the havoc, give it all to me against that Alabama offensive line.
Yeah, and I think ultimately what's going to happen is, look, on the season, Texas A&M 17th nationally in rush success rate, 17th in yards per carry allowed at 2.9. So to put that in perspective, last year they allowed 4.8, 109th in the country. They're over almost 2 yards better, and they're top 15 nationally in defensive line yards. That they're going to win that trench battle. What does that mean is going to happen in front of a raucous crowd? 3rd and longs, passing situations. So now you can have a safety back because you don't want to give up, and you're going to make Milroe throw it in the intermediate routes. If that's going to lead to a key mistake or 2, just like we saw against Texas. And I think I agree with the under move. I think this will be a lower scoring game that probably plays out like 20 to 17, 23 to 17 A&M. For what it's worth, we also have seen this Alabama team struggle in true road games over the past few seasons. Since 2009, the Tide have gone just 5-10 against the spread in true road games, including 2-5 against ranked opponents, all as favorites with an average spread of over 10 points. They've lost 3 of those 7 outright. That doesn't even include the 2021 loss at Texas A&M, an unranked Texas A&M team, when Alabama was laying 18.5. And for what it's worth, Nick Saban is just 7-13 against the spread as a favorite of less than a touchdown against SEC foes. So I agree. It is all about the Aggies. Gig 'em. All right, let's talk about our last marquee game of the day. And we're going to go to prime time. So it's easy. The bar's here. We can go, where I'll be out. We'll go Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Texas A&M. And then obviously we're going at 7 Eastern, Georgia, Kentucky, Georgia, 14.5 point favorite here. Another total that's come down a bit from the soft open, down 47.5, 48. This is a really interesting game because Kentucky played nobody to start the year. Didn't look great doing so. Then last week they exploded. And by they, I mean Ray Davis against Florida in dominant fashion. Georgia, meanwhile, they haven't really played anyone either. And they haven't really looked that impressive. They continue to just be flat early in games. I mean, every single game and this is what I said last week would happen against Auburn. They'll come out flat and they'll be down like 7-10-0 at the end of the first quarter. Guess what? They were down 10-0 at the end of the first quarter. So my first thought in this game is because I make this right around 2 touchdowns. So I don't have a side that I'm like, this is what you have to play. I do have the spot says Georgia. But will Georgia wake up? I assume that teams would wake up after like bad performances, but even against South Carolina, this keeps happening. So, but you would expect Georgia to come out here, especially be on full alert here at home at night in Athens between the hedges after what Kentucky did last week. The spot says, okay, Georgia's going to be ready here because I do have some concerns for Kentucky. So Kentucky's offense has lived on explosives all year, and it's been very inefficient down to down. There's 3 reasons for that. One is, there's been some offensive line reshuffling. They're getting better in that aspect. We'll see if Kenneth Horsey's fully healthy, ready to go, which would be important. But 2, Devin Leary's dealing with this mechanical issue post-injury where he's just not that accurate, especially early on in games. Number 3, there's a ton of wide receiver drops. So, they're relying on these explosive plays. Now, last week, what they relied on was Ray Davis lining up and just getting the ball and going right at Florida, right? And just running down their throat all day. I don't think you're going to be able to do that against Georgia. But then again, I mean, Auburn somehow just ran all through them. And you can't really get explosive plays against this Georgia defense. So it's very hard for me to see Kentucky sustaining drives and getting all the explosives that they've been relying on. It really comes down to can Ray Davis put this team on his back again against a Georgia defense that you would think, right, with all the talent they have, would show up here after last week where they're kind of embarrassed against an Auburn team that can't complete a forward pass, running all over them and almost beating them outright. So that's what really worries me. And then the issues for Leary are really early on. So if you get down in this game, then it could get ugly quick, and then you can't really stick to the run. And then on the other side of the ball, this Kentucky defense, I love their front. And the Georgia offensive line does have some questions. I'm not totally sold on Carson Beck yet, but this Kentucky defense lost some key pieces from last year. They haven't really been tested. I mean, look at the quarterbacks they faced. Graham Mertz is far and away the best quarterback that they faced. And they've also played in the friendly confines of Kroger Field in Lexington, Kentucky the entire year. So this is a little bit different, a big step up in class. So the spot and my gut says Georgia, but I make it around 2 touchdowns, and so I won't be betting it. Maybe if it's not, if there's some money that comes in on Kentucky, I actually might think about betting Georgia just on intuition, spot, matchup, gut. But what do you see here?
I'm in the same place as you. The gut tells me don't look at anything, just bet Georgia. Cowardly if you want to buy that hook and get it down to 14, do it. But at the same time, in live betting, if Kentucky comes out and gets a score in the first drive, what are you going to get? 11? I mean, you're going to get a number there. But, this is a game. I think I'm in the minority on the total here. I've bet on the total and I haven't bet on the side yet. And I project this game to be in the 50s from a total. And I think it's important to know that, when we put those out, mine is a net yards per play, finishing drives, and pace. That's how we got there. And I think this is a lesson for everybody out there that's new to the handicapping world. I see a lot of people on Twitter making arguments and graphics and doing everything around explosiveness. I got news for everybody. Explosiveness does not win ball games. It doesn't. There's no correlation to covering and winning to explosives. And I say that as Kentucky is number 1 in the nation in rush explosives this season. Georgia is 38th in defending rush explosives. So that's all Kentucky has. They are terrible in a success rate perspective, 124th in the nation strength of schedule, mid FBS success rate passing and running. They're not going to move the chains a lot. If they're going to score, it's because Ray Davis or somebody busted a big one. And that is possible against Georgia, maybe once or twice. We saw it with Auburn. But are you going to be able to sustain that all game and get an outright victory doing that? No. Explosives do not equal outright victories. And I think this game
Georgia's defense also does a good job of preventing explosives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think, when you look at, Georgia's 3rd in the nation in defending pass explosives, and you're not going to get any of that out of Kentucky. I think the weird thing for me is Kirby's going to have him amped up. Kirby's going to coach him up after that performance against Auburn. Like all of a sudden the Georgia defense is like binary. It's either on or off. It's like, okay, this week we're going to show up and shut them down. I still need to see something out of the defensive ends. But the UGA front seven, I went deep on Georgia and their front seven. They've really dipped in efficiency. They're 69th in tackles for loss. They have a major dip. The biggest dip that I can see is that they've fallen from 30th to 77th and allowing 4-yard rushing gains over the past 2 seasons. Like they have fallen off and letting people run up to the line of scrimmage. We'll see if that gets turned around. Georgia's allowed 19 rushing attempts to exceed 10 yards already this year. They've allowed 55 points, UAB, South Carolina, and Auburn. And if we have motivation now against Kentucky, why didn't we have motivation against South Carolina or against Auburn last week? So I understand it, but I do think Kentucky's going to get enough points to get over this total. It's down to 47, 47.5. 48 was key. I really like the over better below 48. But when you look at the Georgia side of the ball, Carson Beck has not been bad. He has more big-time throws and turnover-worthy plays, 7-2 TD to INT ratio. And, Kentucky doesn't produce havoc on defense, but they are 12th in coverage. So when I did a little deep dive on the coverage, Kentucky plays a mix of cover 3 and they mix in a little quarters. Georgia has smoked cover 3. In 180 snaps against it this year, their success rate and explosiveness has been better than any other coverage. They do not do well against cover 2. Kentucky doesn't run cover 2. I think Georgia gets their points. I think they cover this spread, and I think we get over the total. Maybe that's 48, maybe that's 49, but I think we're getting over this total.
Yeah, I would also say, look, at some point, Georgia is who they are. And, if they're this complacency, it's not even just I'm going on a small sample size. I said this was going to be an issue coming into the year, right? And after everything I was reading, just what I was thinking about this team, and that's played out every single game. So, like you said, why would they hit the on switch and come out on fire to start this game? So if you like Georgia, I don't see any value in the number, then so there's no reason for me to dive in now. They've showed you over and over again that they're going to be down in the first quarter. They're going to come out flat.
Neutral point differential in the first quarter, 13 plus in the second and third quarter for point differential.
Yeah, so again, that could be your sweat. You don't have to bet every marquee game. Okay, let's see if Georgia goes down 7-0, 10-0 again, and that's what it takes for them to get fired up. And then you can bet a better number. So because of that, I would maybe take Kentucky and then look to get Georgia. But Leary has struggled so much early on with his accuracy that I don't trust, in Kentucky on their first road, I don't trust Kentucky's offense enough early on. And once he starts to warm up, that's when their offenses looked a lot better. It's going to be up to Ray Davis, I think, early on. So because of that, I'm staying away pregame, but go Cats. All right, before we get to rapid fire to cover a bunch more games, I do want to remind everyone to make sure you check out the Group of Five guys, Mike Calabrese and Mike Iannella on the Group of Five deep dive every Wednesday morning here on BBOC, talking all things Group of Five. At Jack State last night, and I know they like Miami of Ohio too. And they talk, I think they break down Wyoming, Fresno, which we'll talk about shortly. But they always do a great job, and it's not too long like us. They don't ramble too much, so it's an easy listen to grab a few more nuggets for the Group of Five guys, and listening to them helps us out as well. So shout to Mike and Mike. Appreciate all of you who tune into them as well. All right, let's get to rapid fire here. Let's talk quickly about your boys,
Oof,
your LSU boys who can't stop a nosebleed.
they're so bad on defense.
Defense is it's troubling. They are. I mean, you could just keep going into advanced metrics. We won't. They're just all horrific. Is all you need to know. LSU Missouri's taking some money here. LSU's down to a 4.5 point favorite. Over under has gone up. If you like bet low limits and bet way early in the week, I think for like the time being, whenever an LSU game comes out, just bet the over. And I'm sure you're going to get a ton of CLV. The offense is humming along. Jaden Daniels is playing at a very high level. But the problem is their games are just, okay, who has the ball last, essentially. And they, maybe that's, I don't know. How's it not?
They're the live betting champions of the world is what they are.
Yeah. How's that not? I mean, Brady Cook's playing well for Missouri now. There's been some explosiveness now in that offense. So tell me why this game shouldn't be any different than every other LSU game we saw this year.
I can't handle it. I mean, like, I've been sitting around for 4 days. Like, what is this total? I can't figure this. Like, who is betting the under on this total? Who moved this from 65 down to 63.5? I didn't get that at all. But, I'm not going to go through LSU stats. They're bad. It's red. It's gross. It's worse than MAC teams. Let's just put it that way. And when you look at the Missouri side, they are humming. Luther Burden, we talked about this on the new BCS show. Luther Burden is the number 1 graded wide receiver I think of all targets right now in PFF, 4.8 yards per route run. 2 is considered explosive. I don't think I've ever seen a wide receiver with this many. And I'm thinking like Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka. Like I'm really going through the gambit of the big wide receivers the last couple of years. I have not seen a number like 4.8. He moved into the slot this year. That's going to give him slot corner Sage Ryan. He had 65 snaps last week for LSU. He's been targeted 14 times this year. He's allowed 11 catches, averaging 10.2 yards, and he has not recorded a PBU. So what does that mean? The biggest weapon for Missouri is going to run wild. Brady Cook has not thrown an interception this year. He's 11-2, big-time throw to turnover-worthy plays. And oh, by the way, Missouri's defense struggles in scoring opportunities too. Like they're actually not that bad in defense, especially against the rush. They should give Jaden Daniels a little bit of problems with the zone read. But when it comes to defending the pass, holy cow, LSU is going to get theirs. Missouri is also 113th in defensive finishing drives. And, that is a big stat for me when it comes to betting on totals. If you're just giving points away when teams get across the 40, I'm going to bet an over on you. So considering that Missouri has allowed 13 of 14 opponent red zone drives to score, I wanted the over in this pretty bad. So I have already bet Missouri. I think I've got some 6, 5.5. I've got both. And I'm going to come back. I think I said in the notes on the Action app, I'm going to come back and bet LSU live when the time is right. But I want the over in this game. And I think as you and I are podcasting, I'm going to throw some money down and put it in the app because these numbers, the defenses don't stop anybody in scoring position. And it's going to be a pass heavy game. So I'm just going to take the over. If it loses, I'll be shocked, but I won't, there'll be other bad beats, but I'm going to take the over in this one. But 65 is pretty key. If you can get under that, do that.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with the Missouri offense. Early in the year, there was just no explosiveness. They weren't throwing downfield. That was against Middle Tennessee and South Dakota. I just think they weren't showing a lot.
That's his only. That's his only 2 turnover-worthy plays. Brady Cook's two turnover-worthy plays were against Middle Tennessee. No other team.
Yeah, and we talked about how Drinkwitz gave up play calling, right? And yep. I was hopeful that the offense would be better. And then after the first 2 games, I was extremely skeptical. And then since then, it's the output has been very promising. And that offense is, as you said, humming along right now. So, yeah, I mean, look, taking Missouri in the points over a field goal against this LSU team in the game that probably comes down to the wire, I don't think is a bad idea.
Definitely.
Also, decent like round robin, because like just the variance in this game, you could throw Missouri potential round robin piece. But go ahead.
No, I mean, it's definitely a note for the futures for us that Kirby Moore didn't flash anything in non-conference.
Yeah.
He waited till Kansas State to show his real offense. So that's something to bookmark for next year, that I'm not taking Missouri in these shit games.
Yeah. Yeah. Huge. One of the biggest games in recent memory for Missouri, as the Tigers look to move to 6-0 on the season. All right, let's move on to another game in the SEC, and let's talk a little Hogs. Arkansas, 11.5-point underdog here. Over under sitting at 63-ish. I think the under has taken a tiny bit of money. I guess this, Ole Miss coming off that absolute war with LSU. Arkansas, meanwhile, sitting at 2-3 on the season. They've lost back-to-back games they've lost 3 straight to BYU, LSU, and Texas A&M. Been on they were close. They were really close against LSU. BYU was kind of an unlucky loss. So from a spot perspective, like this is similar to like Arkansas against LSU, right? Like, is this line getting a little too high? Is this a good buy low spot? And a little maybe Ole Miss comes out a little flat here. But I trust you in all things Arkansas. Are they going to be able to stop this Ole Miss now getting healthier attack? And is the Danny Enos offense going to be able to keep up? If not, what's going on down in Hogville?
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, Hogville's pissed. Hogville's got the pitchforks out. They're ready to. I mean, they are ready to fire Sam Pittman for hiring a friend. Sam Pittman and Dan Enos. I know we said this on the preseason pod. They were together in 2015. Arkansas's offense in 2015 with Buda Collins and Brandon Allen. They were number 2 in the nation in SP plus offense. Sam Pittman left the program over to Georgia, and Dan Enos turned in 2 of the worst Arkansas offenses ever in 2016 and 2017. And so I think what you should take away to that from a high level is that Dan Enos likes really slow developing plays. And that is a complete contrast to what Kendall Briles does. Pace, everything. I mean, Arkansas is down to 30 seconds per play. I mean, what were they at 23 last year? It's just a completely different change. Now, the group that has really suffered is the offensive line. And if Sam Pittman's going to get fired, it's because of this offensive line. So he comes in this week on Monday and he says, we're switching all the positions. Now, specifically, preseason All-American center Bo Limmer moves out of center. He goes to left guard. And right tackle Patrick Kudus, who is a wanted man in Fayetteville, he moves down to center. So they've taken the right tackle down to center. He's never played center before. He doesn't have any experience last year. And KJ has said all week, we're just trying to give him confidence. I'm just trying to get him confidence. I'm like, this is not what I want to be hearing. And so when you look at Kudus's numbers, he's been unbelievably bad at right tackle. Allowed 3 sacks. He's allowed 10 hurries. He's allowed 14 pressures already. None of the other offensive linemen have even come close to those numbers. So it's the same 5, but they've juggled 3 of them into different spots. It's going to be, same from a run blocking perspective, but Kudus, he has the worst grade out of all of them. I don't know if Dan Enos is calling the plays. I don't know if we're going to go to more quick hitters that Briles had. Pittman's not really saying who's calling the plays, but he has completely dove right in and taken over this offense. So we'll see. It's a little bit, what are we going to get out of Arkansas? It could be a complete failure, or they could just be hitting plays all over the place. I would not be surprised to see them come out and be hot, and I wouldn't be surprised if they came out completely flat and couldn't control anything. Now, Ole Miss has very depressed defensive numbers. They're mid-FBS against the pass rush. They're outside the top 100 in defending the run, and especially from a stuff rate and a line yards perspective. They cannot take advantage of a poor havoc number that Arkansas is putting up. And Ole Miss and Jackson Dart should create explosive plays against the Arkansas defense. Dart's about a 0.3 EPA against cover 1. Arkansas runs a ton of cover 1 because Travis Williams, the defensive coordinator, came in from UCF. He loves to blitz. He loves to leave one safety back and try to cover it from there. So, Dart has 0 drop-off and adjusted completion percentage rate with pressure. So even if Arkansas turns on the blitz and turns on all this pressure, Jackson Dart's actually been really good with pressure. Like, there's been no drop-off in his game. If I can't handicap the Arkansas offense because this offensive line is a complete and utter disaster, it's an Ole Miss team total play over for me. I'm taking the Arkansas offense completely out of this equation. I get it. I got a bunch of texts from people that you and I run around with. that are like, we got to play Arkansas. It's the spot. I don't bet on teams that implement a new center, and that center is the worst offensive lineman in the group. I can't bet it. Maybe it's great for Arkansas and Pittman knows what he's doing. He saves his job, but I am not betting on a team that switches a center in game 5, game 6. Can't do it. So Ole Miss team total over for me.
Blow up the program. Give us the death sentence. All right, moving on to Maryland, Ohio State. Buckeyes coming off of a bye after that Notre Dame thriller, taking on a undefeated 5-0 Maryland squad. Ohio State 20-point favorites here, over under 57. I can tell you historically, if you're into trends, whenever there's like 2 undefeated teams, especially 2 ranked teams, and the spread is 17 or more, the favorite has had a ton of success. Usually the line is that high for a reason. I'm not into laying 20 with, against a competent team with Kyle McCord and this offense that I'm still not fully sold on, but I'm not running to back Maryland here. I maybe you could talk me off of it, but I'm think I'm going to bet the under here. If you look at what Maryland has done, they played nobody, by the way. They played absolutely nobody. And the offense is what it usually is, right? Like you're going to get a ton of explosive plays. It's not really that efficient, but it's been so inconsistent.
The sloppiness from Tagovailoa has not been there, though. That's the difference.
Yeah. But it's like, I think that this Ohio State defense is significantly improved. There's still I still think they're a bit undervalued in the market on that side of the ball. And I think the offense is a bit overvalued because of all their weapons, and I'm just not sold on McCord and some of the offensive line issues yet. I mean, if you look at what is Ohio State, any team with a pulse this year, if Notre Dame doesn't drop a wide open interception or plays with 11 men, they score 10 points. They only scored 23 against Indiana. It's like they scored 35 against Youngstown State. Now, does McCord? This is all Ohio State fans have said. Oh yeah, but the final drive, he made one throw. Like he's going to be confident now. Like what? Like no, that's not a thing. And so, thing. But does Day figure out some things off the bye? Right, you have 2 weeks to prepare, and he's a young kid, so like that a little bit scares me. But I really do trust the Ohio State defense. The numbers are there. I don't think that Maryland's going to be able to rely on explosives as much as they have been. And look, the offense has even been inconsistent already against subpar competition. I mean, they haven't played any defense yet. I mean, they played Indiana, Michigan State, Virginia, Charlotte, and Towson. I mean, and in some of those halves, like the offense was stuck. And then they just have these explosions, which I don't think they're going to get against Ohio State. And I think the Maryland defense can at least stop the floodgates from opening like you see sometimes in these Ohio State games in the past where this would be, 48-17. So I think this profile is more like a 35-17 game than a, 45-24 game, which you might have seen in the past between Ohio State and Maryland. So yeah, I'm leaning under here mainly because I just think Ohio State's defense is still a bit undervalued, and I still don't trust the offense fully. What do you see here?
I think Ohio State's absolutely going to roll them. Now, I don't power rate it as high as the market is, but I just feel like we get lulled into this every single year. Look at the series between these two. Last year, 43-30. Okay. Then 66-17, 73-14, 62-14. I mean, these numbers are
that's what scares me about the under, because every time Ohio State plays Maryland, they score 100 points.
It's like a get healthy game. It's like they see the Terrapins on the schedule and that they circle it. It's our get healthy game. I don't know what it is about this one, but I mean, on history alone, you would just bet the over. Sharp money came in at 58 on the under, though. So that, we'll see how the market reacts. I don't know if they're shaping it or what's going on with it. But, 2 changes with this version of Maryland. They're not making mistakes. They're 14th in havoc allowed. And they have very poor pass explosives and passing down explosive numbers. And that may hurt them here in this game. Ohio State's coverage is graded 5th by PFF. They have a much higher strength of schedule than Maryland. I mean, Ohio State's not great at 51st. They have played Notre Dame. Maryland has played nobody. Their strength of schedule is 122nd. And
that's why it's hard to even trust some of these Maryland numbers, because it's like they've played clowns.
And I think that when I see strength of schedule, when we get to like 4, 5, 6 games into the season and you've got all this data to look at, what really stands out to me is when you have a soft strength of schedule, which Maryland does, and then you've got all this red in your data, right? Like Maryland has been terrible on defense, stopping the run and creating havoc. They're 115th in defensive rushing success rate. They're 111th in defensive line yards. If Iowa State wants to run all over Travion, Henderson and Mayan Williams, if anybody else wants to run all over them, they're going to be able to do it. I am looking at a market that's floating 19 and a halves and 20 and a halves out there. I bet you this closes closer to 21. I think I didn't make this my overdog, and I don't usually bet teams this high. I think Ohio State is the play on the side.
Yeah, that's what the market's telling you, and I agree. Ohio State's probably gonna keep taking money. Two other quick ones for rapid fire. Let's talk two undefeated teams. UNC is hosting Syracuse. Syracuse off that Clemson pretty convincing loss. UNC remains undefeated on the season. And then we have Fresno State now ranked 5-0. They head to Laramie to take on Wyoming, where weird things happen. They're laying 6 on the road. Fresno State has taken some money since open. What are your thoughts on either of these two games? Do you like any side?
Yeah, I mean, Garrett Schrader is the big one for me. I want to bet Syracuse pretty bad. I don't think the number should be 9.5. It won't be 9.5 if Garrett Schrader is there, but he is in concussion protocol. Carlos Del Rio Wilson, 3 TDs to no INTs. He's had 70 dropbacks last season in terms of experience, but he doesn't have Garrett Schrader's wheels, which are kind of important here. And UNC has struggled on defense against the rush. They can't stop ground explosives whatsoever. And the Orange are 37th in rush EPA, but that's all on Schrader's legs. He's had 13 runs of 10 and more. He averages 4.4 yards after contact, and his 28 missed tackles easily lead the team. You don't see a quarterback creating that many missed tackles. So Syracuse UNC is completely a Garrett Schrader bet. If he's not there, I like the under in that game. Is when it comes to Fresno State and Wyoming, there's just, again, a monster discrepancy in strength of schedule. Fresno is getting so much love everywhere for this fantastic defense. They're 117th in the nation in strength of schedule. I mean, they have, what do we got here? Purdue, first game. I think this is what kills me about this Fresno team. And I really wish people talking out of my TV were smarter, right? Here's Fresno's schedule. Purdue, game 1, new offense, new coach. Eastern Washington, new coach, new offense. Arizona State.
They also won both those games by 3 each.
Yeah. Arizona State, new coach, new offense. Kent State, new coach, new offense. Then Nevada. Okay, Ken Wilson's in year 2, but is it really year 2? I don't think it is. And you're basing Fresno's defensive numbers on that. I like Wyoming. I prefer an under 45 here. Key numbers in the range, 45, 41. It's kind of gone under down, I think, 43. I like the under here. I don't believe in Mikey Keene's numbers for Fresno. They are not as good as advertised. Don't let the people talking in your TV tell you that Fresno State has a great defense because they've played nobody.
Yeah, we'll see. And look, by the way, I should mention that this is the time of the year. We'll spend more time on it in future weeks, but this is the time of year where wind starts to become a potential hindrance to offenses and kickers. So if you see a lot of under money, especially early in the week in certain regions, a lot of MAC games will always fit here. But Laramie, or Laradice, as some like to call it, that's one of the wind capitals of the country. So you always want to pay attention to games in Wyoming for the weather. You also, every once in a while you'll have like a foot of snow. So weird things happen there. So yeah, I wouldn't disagree with trusting the Pokes there at home. All right, before we get to some trash, quick reminder, I got a few messages after my NFL podcast with Chris Raybon asking about the Action Discord server. If you want to know where to find the best lines for our guy Sean Kerner for his NFL prop bets before they move a ton every time he releases them, or his live bets, just join Action's free Discord server. That's the best place. Basically, you can, if you're there, it's a way to get the best prices before they move when Sean releases them. And you can just hang out with personalities like Sean, myself. I'm going to start doing some stuff there, especially as we get into college basketball. You can just chop it up for events like Thursday Night Football, the end of a college football slate, the end of a college basketball slate. So we're going to start to do a lot more things there with our personalities, including myself. So you just need an invitation link and the Discord app. So if you're interested, we'll drop an article link in the description of this episode. So make sure you check that out. We're going to be doing a lot of things there. Look forward to chopping it up with some of you on there in the near future. All right, let's get to some trash. Sadly, I don't have a ton this week. I was looking at future weeks, and there's going to be some, I think, if I can project right, there's going to be some ugly trash. Let's start with Georgia Tech. They just lost to Bowling Green, taking on the Miami Machine. I'm taking Georgia Tech. It sucks. It's ugly. The Georgia Tech offense has been fine. Haynes King's been playing really well. The offense is humming along. I love their offensive coordinator. Scoring points has not been an issue. And by the way, this is a Georgia Tech team that could have beat Louisville. They were right there with Ole Miss on the road until the final 5 minutes when Lane scored 3 touchdowns for no reason. And so their offense has been there. The defense has been the major problem, and they could get Chase Lane back this week. I think he's going to play. He's important at receiver. They might get their right tackle back as well. He's important. The offense will be fine, and that's basically the handicap for me. Is that Miami's off a bye. They got North Carolina next week. I think they might be a little sleepy here. Just looking ahead, they got Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, for whatever reason, always goes down to Miami, even with way worse teams, and the game is always weird and it bends by a field goal. I think the last 3 have ended by 1 point, 2 points, and 7 points in Miami against bad Georgia Tech teams. But I just think that it could be a little sleepy spot for Miami. I know that even off of a bye. And I think Georgia Tech will come out fully focused after an embarrassing loss. And by the way, that's not the first time Georgia Tech has suffered an embarrassing loss. They lost at home to Citadel a few years ago, if you recall. They lost to Northern Illinois 2 years ago at home. And then after that, they covered 3 straight, and including they destroyed North Carolina, a ranked North Carolina team. And they also went down to Clemson after that Northern Illinois loss. No one gave them a shot. Do you remember this game? And they almost won. It was 13-8. So I think I like this staff. The only person I don't like on the staff is their defensive coordinator, who, by the way, they demoted. I mean, their defense has been a disaster. So the defensive coordinator got fired. He got demoted to, I don't know, the right defensive end coach. So new defensive coordinator. You're gonna get a little new wrinkles, maybe a motivated unit. Get some new guys in there. Can't get worse. So maybe there's some upside there. But Miami's gonna score. There's no question there. I just think Georgia Tech, this number's a little inflated, and Georgia Tech can score enough. And if needed, get in the back door, which they owe us after the Ole Miss debacle. Agree or disagree?
I am going to let you do this one on your own. I went through this Georgia Tech Bowling Green box score a billion times. I just could not figure it out. And finally, it became crystal clear. Georgia Tech got armied, right? Bowling Green pulled an army. 43 minutes.
They had the ball for the entire game.
Yeah, 43 minutes of possession. They got up 14-0, and then Bowling Green went Army. I've never heard of a great comeback story saying, let's adopt the Army offense. They went 43 minutes of possession. They had scoring drives where the plays were 10, 11, 10, 7, 10, and there was a pick 6 in there to make the score look really ugly. The national average for methodical drives is about 1 out of every 9 possessions. Bowling Green had 4 methodical drives out of 11. And I think it goes back to your story about the defensive coordinator. It's Buster Faulkner, the offensive coordinator, is great. I mean, he is going to be hired at a bigger program with a lot more money here soon. But the defense scares me against Miami because they can be methodical. They have the 12th lowest percentage of 3-and-outs in the nation. They're 4th nationally in drives that exceed 50 yards. They're 3rd offensively in quality drives. So I don't think it's really their style to methodically beat you and just kind of slowly move the chains. So that should give Georgia Tech's offense time to score and maybe backdoor and have enough points here. But I'm going to sit out because that Bowling Green, that Georgia Tech defense got armied. And I don't know, there's some residual there. Good luck.
Thank you. Florida Atlantic, we're going to go with the Owls here. I got a bad number. I like 3.5. You can get a 3 now, which obviously I love even more. They're taking on Tulsa. I think this is a buy point for FAU. I think it's the bottom of the market. Look, they lost to Ohio, Clemson, and Illinois non-conference. Very brutal non-conference, especially after you lose your quarterback. They could have beat Illinois. They could have beat Ohio. And, they lost to Clemson in a horrendous spot on the road. And then they have a bye week. I think this is the bottom of the market on there. Daniel Richardson, more than capable as quarterback. And now you get 2 weeks to prepare the offense with him. under center. And then you're going up against a pass defense that PFF ranks 7th worst in coverage. So I think FAU will score here. Tulsa could get their quarterback back, but I mean, I don't think it makes much of a difference. There also could be some rust there. For what it's worth, this has nothing to do with betting, but Tulsa is playing the Owls. Florida Atlantic are the Owls. Last week they played Temple, and next week they play Rice. They play the Owls 3 straight weeks. So if you're a Tulsa fan, you're getting used to the Owl gifts.
Is Kennesaw State next week?
Rice. It's Rice.
I'm sorry. It's Kennesaw State in the next week.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they play 4 straight Owls. I tried to find if it's the first time in college football history a team's played 3 straight Owls, and I was like, "What am I doing? Why am I doing this?" So I stopped. There's no like database where you could figure that out. So I was like going through schedules. Yeah, sometimes at 4 a.m, I get lost in the sauce, and I'd lose myself. So anyway, I think FAU also has some looming positive late down finishing drives regression. And given their schedule, that kind of makes sense. And yeah, Tulsa's like top 30 nationally in 3rd and 4th down conversion rate, while FAU's bottom 20. So I think there's some regression there. Tulsa also has miserable special teams, which could make the difference here on the road. I think this is a spot to buy FAU.
Yeah, I like it at 3 right now. I make this 4. I would take the 3 there at home. There's a big difference in some key areas. Number 1 being tackling. Florida Atlantic is top 10 in the nation. Tulsa's bottom 10. Tulsa runs the ball a lot. They're 67%. If Braylon Braxton comes back, which I remember I tweeted out like an hour before a game, he was out there warming up. I thought he was going to play.
Yeah.
Had everything in his lower body taped up, and then he didn't end up playing at all. So I think
he had his ankles all heavily taped, and
yeah. And I think, Tulsa, I love the broken tackle stat that I've got here, and they're 135th because that includes FCS teams, and creating broken tackles. And the fact that Florida Atlantic is 7th in tackling means they're going to be able to tackle in space here. Tulsa's near dead last in havoc allowed. I'll take the FAU defense to do enough to get this done. So I'm with you.
Yeah, off a bye after a tough non-con, get the new quarterback assimilated with the first stringers, and I think it's a good buy spot. Last one, I know you disagree with this one. I'm waiting on the 10. I'm betting Cal. I always bet Cal as a double-digit dog. Wilcox is 21-7 against the spread as an underdog of more than 4 points, including 10-1 at home. And they just ugly up the game. And I think you might see Ben Finley here, which is how you have to attack this Oregon State defense in the secondary. But the biggest thing is that, look, it's a tough spot for this Oregon State team. You destroy Utah, and now you're going down to Cal. Like, I could see this being potentially a little sleepy. But here's the thing, Cal, and look, they shut down Auburn. They should have beat Auburn. Auburn converted a 3rd and 17 late. They also played Washington statistically pretty close, but that was a bad matchup for them. This Cal defense has been very good against the run, and that's what you have to do to stop Oregon State. And they've been great up front. They've been a little shaky on the back end, but from what I've seen, I just don't trust this Oregon State passing attack. And Cal is top 10 nationally in EPA per rush allowed. That's just huge in this matchup. They'll ugly up this game, and they're the Cal's feistier than last year's team. And last year they lost by 1 possession against Notre Dame, Washington, USC, UCLA. It's just what they do. I think this is another close game. I know you played Oregon State, but I'm playing Cal Bears. 10 Eastern, Pac-12 Network. That's what I'll be sweating late.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this comes down to, of course, the rushing attack for Oregon State. Cal is better against the rush than they are against the pass, but Cal, bottom 10 in the nation in defensive finishing drives. That's going against a Jonathan Smith offense that annually kills it in scoring opportunities. And so that is definitely an area that I focus on. And Cal has run the ball 55%. I know Ben Finley is going to be able to attack that secondary. Oregon State doesn't generate much of a pass rush. They're not that great in coverage, but when it comes to a ground game, they're there. So they should put Cal in passing downs. It just matters what Finley wants to do with that time. Cal is 130th in special teams SP plus. So that's a little scary. So I am on Oregon State. We'll go head to head. I'm not comfortable taking a team on the road that likes to run all the time and doesn't really explode. But I projected 11. I think if it gets up to 11, I could buy out and maybe play on the 10, but we'll see.
Go Bears. All right, let's no San Diego State over. San Diego State overs have been hot. No, but they have a bye this week. So nothing there. So now it's time to go 3-0. All right, let's start off first down. Friday Night Lights. I got nothing on either of these games. I'm tempted to fade Illinois again, who hasn't covered all year. Their defense is atrocious. I'm not buying anything Brett Bielema is selling. They take on Nebraska. And then you also have Kansas State, double-digit favorite at Oklahoma State. I can't get to this number, but I'm not backing this Oklahoma State team. So I have nothing in either this game other than a lean of wanting to fade Bielema again. So maybe I'll get there on Friday night. Do you have anything on either Friday night game?
I don't see how you could support Illinois here. I mean, Bielema just lost to his defensive coordinator who's trying to revamp an entire program. I mean, that's bad. I think what you're looking for signal from Nebraska is that Jeff Sims is healthy. Looks like Heinrich Harburg. He's been pretty forgettable under center, 5 fumbles the last 3 games. It's like he's really taken in Jeff Sims' spot, except he doesn't have the running attached with it. So we'll see if Jeff Sims is going to play. If he is, you can go ahead and grab Nebraska, I guess, if you want. I'm not sure I'm going to be running to it. Illinois is 128th in offensive quality drives. They can't get down the field for their life. It doesn't matter if it's 11 lawn chairs lined up in front of them. They can't get down the field. I don't know why I'm not blindly playing Kansas State against Oklahoma State. The numbers for Oklahoma State are beyond atrocious. Cowboys 123rd in defensive passing success rate, 131st in tackling against this Kansas State offense that's going to, have an offensive line smack you upside the head as the running back goes by. Alan Bowman's going to get the start for Oklahoma State's offense. He's had almost twice as many turnover-worthy plays than he has big-time throws. The Pokes are just atrocious at passing the ball. They're even worse in passing downs, and they have a low probability of running the ball, and Kansas State is second in the nation in defensive stuff rate. I think Oklahoma State's
a mess.
I think their team total under is the play, considering Kansas State defensively matches up really well and can shut them down. Under 55 is my desire. I don't think there's any reason this number gets steamed up. So I think Oklahoma State team total under is where I'll probably slide a bet in before the game.
All right, let's move on to second down and talk our favorite overdog, our favorite. I'll kick things off. I'm gonna go with Louisiana under a field goal against Texas State. I know Texas State got us last week. They built a big lead, almost gave it up, then got a front door touchdown. Too many of those this year. But I think the market's still too high on Texas State. They really haven't played anyone. They're still living off of that win to start the year over Baylor, which doesn't look as good. And they have the element of surprise there. Since then, they played absolute trash, like Jackson State, Nevada. They've also been just too inconsistent. And I think they finally get picked off here against the Louisiana team coming off the loss. So I think Louisiana under a field goal is cheap here. So give me the Raging Cajuns.
I'm going to go with Boise State. There's 9.5. There's 10s out there. I like it a little bit higher than that. I think I make it 13.5. So I think there's still some room here for Boise to run in the market. Don't listen to the noise about Maddox Madsen splitting time with Taylon Green. I think that's a smokescreen for the fact that Ashton Jeanty is absolutely running over everybody. 4 TDs his last 2 games. Sure, you lost to Memphis. It was on the road. They're a decent team that can throw. This is a completely different San Jose State defense. And they have no ability to stop the rush whatsoever. When you look at San Jose State going up against heavy rush offenses, against Air Force and Oregon State, they each posted blowout wins against San Jose State. Both the Falcons and the Beavers posted season-high rushing success rate while experiencing minimal line of scrimmage stuff rates against the Spartans defense. San Jose State can't stuff any holes at the offensive line. That is a big problem against Jeanty. So I'm not really worried about Taylon Green. Maybe they tell Taylon Green, you can finally run outside the pocket. Maybe Bush Hamdan, the offensive coordinator of Boise, is finally going to allow his quarterback to do what he did last year. But I'm not holding my breath. I think Ashton Jeanty is really the difference here. I think they're going to roll San Jose State up at home.
Yeah, San Jose State they had 2, of their best players in program history along that defensive line last year. They lost. That's what we talked about, why we didn't like them against Air Force. They have major run defense issues, and Jeanty is amazing. If you can't defend the run against Boise, you're in trouble. So like that one as well. All right, let's move on to our final task on third down, and that is our favorite moneyline underdogs for underdog moneyline parlay. These have been hot lately. I'll kick things off. I'm gonna go with Arizona State against Colorado. This is the spot. Colorado, I don't know how much they have left in the tank. This is the team that doesn't have much depth. Everything's been a huge event every single week. Every week we have this huge game. We have Jay-Z coming. Let's go. We're talking shit. Now you're going down to Tempe, on Pac-12 network, and the game no one's going to watch except me because I have Arizona State, and luckily I have Pac-12 network. And actually, no, I'll be out for this game. Yeah, I'll have to get this on my phone. But Arizona State, this spot, I just don't know what Colorado's left in the tank. So this is a potential come out completely flat. I also don't love how I don't like this Colorado team at all as a favorite. They don't play defense and you can't run the ball. So you do not profile as a good favorite. And I think this is a good matchup for Arizona State, who still has a bit of value. I think a lot of people in the market are just remembering the disastrous games early in the season, but they've been pretty good since. Almost beat Cal. We're in a game with USC late. Bourget has been good at quarterback, and they've had to deal with a ton of injuries, so they're starting to come together, especially on the offensive line. But what has Arizona State done really well this year? Defend the pass, defend the explosive pass. They're top 20 nationally in EPA per dropback allowed. What can Colorado do? They can't run the ball. They can't run the ball at all. They're averaging 2.6 yards per carry. And that's how you have to attack this Arizona State defense. They can't stop the run. So Arizona State actually matches up well here defensively, and anyone can score on the Colorado defense. So I think there's some value here with Arizona State, who, by the way, speaking of the spot, not only is this a flat spot for Colorado, this is the team you want to beat. Arizona State can't go to the postseason. We talked about this against USC. These are their Super Bowls, these type of games. This is not the Super Bowl for Colorado. This is a preseason game based on what they've been doing. So Arizona State's going to treat this as a Super Bowl. Colorado who came out, they came out, a couple guys came out and said we're going to run the table, just to complete disrespect of Arizona State. So I love the spot here, and I like the matchup for Arizona State.
I'm with you. I hope Colorado gets their doors blown off, and they continue to do it until Travis Hunter comes back. And when he's healthy, we'll start playing Colorado again against Stanford's and some of the other bottom people.
Yeah, that's another thing. Travis Hunter's out a couple more weeks.
Yeah, I'm going to go back. We talked about it. I'm going to go back to the SEC, Battle of the Tigers. I trust Missouri's defense more than I trust LSU's defense.
You're fading your national champions again.
I'm fading my national champion. I think they are officially out from winning the national title, so it's free reign to try to get my money back on these guys. But, I didn't predict that the defense would be this bad. And, we talked about the offense earlier for Missouri. Brady Cook has been fantastic. He has not thrown an interception. He's only had 2 turnover-worthy plays. They've come against Middle Tennessee State, and he's corrected that. Luther Burden, his move from wideout down to slot has made him the best wide receiver in college football at this point in the season. And so you have to wonder who's going to guard him from the LSU side. Sage Burden, there's some real problems here with the slot corner. Bottom line, Missouri is going to be able to move the ball at will, score at will, and do it through the air. LSU's defense is 125th in quality drives. That means everybody's getting down the field with no hurdles, and they're 130th in defensive finishing drives. In 27 drives that the LSU Tigers, have allowed past the 40-yard line, opponents are getting 4.9 points per trip. Imagine that. You cross the 40, you get 5 points. So I expect Missouri to get a touchdown almost every single time they go down the field. No Harrison Mevis needed, no field goals. And I trust the defense. Missouri can at least throw a roadblock up into Jaden Daniels in the zone read and the run. Passing, I'm a little bit worried about, but in a shootout, I trust Missouri's defense more. Give me the home Tigers in Columbia.
Yeah, I faded LSU last week in the money line underdog parlay because I said, why not take the dog money line in a game where the last team with the ball is probably going to win? So I agree. Same sentiment here. So there is your money line underdog parlay, Arizona State and Missouri. All right, that'll do it for us. Thanks as always for Colin for joining me. And of course, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Thanks to our producer, Matt Mitchell, on the back end, our video team as well. Thanks to our sponsor, BetMGM. Make sure you download the award-winning Action Network app where you can find all of our bets in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. Make sure you check out, we'll have our recap show that will be out Monday. So don't forget about the voicemail, 959-BAD-BEAT. We'll also have our live show, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Colin, fresh off a sweep. He changed his underwear. Hopefully wears the same underwear as last week. 10:30 a.m. Eastern live. We'll tweet out the link there. And then Group of Five Guys, if you haven't checked out that episode, that's already out. We have new BCS, which is out early in the week. That's also live on YouTube, 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, like. But thanks for tuning in. Good luck on all of your wagers this weekend. And we will see you on Saturday morning. Cheers.
Peace out.